Welcome, friends, to the Play Guitar Podcast. I am Lee, and I'm here to help you become the guitar player that you always wanted to be. Remember, this is the podcast. This is the companion to this week's lesson. If you're looking for the lesson, click the link in the description. And in your next practice, go over and try that out, and then come back here and we're going to talk about all the things you need to take away from these things. And why is this week about aimless guitar solos? Again, I've talked about this a lot, aimless guitar solos. It's because it's a term that came up 3 to 4 times last week. I'm not frustrated about it. I'm not. I want to help. This is something that goes on over and over and over again. I want to share a secret with you. And this secret is, I'm going to share this with you. I'll share it with my coaching students. My goal is for you to master 4 things. Just 4 things. That's it. Number 1, fretboard knowledge. Being able to understand how the fretboard works and easily plays till you get to the point where no matter where your hand is on the neck of the guitar, you have everything you need under your fingers. All the chords, all the scales. They're all right there. They're over the whole thing. So fretboard knowledge. The next one is phrasing. Being able to speak in sentences to communicate with music. That's number 2. Number 3 is targeting. Paying attention to the harmony of whatever you're playing. And then rhythm, knowing when is the best time to play these things. Those 4 things. Do they sound fancy? I don't know, but if you're good at these things, if you're good at these 4 things, you're going to be killing it. and everyone who hears your playing is going to agree that you've got it together. These are the things that are holding you all back. And I see it. I see it every day, plain as day. These are the problems that people don't spend any time on. They just pretend like it's not there. If you're in charge of your own progress on the guitar, if you're doing the a la carte method and you're out there saying, I'm going to play, I think I'm going to practice this, I'm going to practice this and practice this. This is where the problem starts. And from what I've seen, these 4 things are not what you're going to pick to practice. Why? Because you're not going to see it. You can't see it. You won't see that that these things are anchors in your guitar playing. What do I mean by an anchor? Well, I've noticed over the years that when everyone's kind of level, if their rhythm playing and their lead playing and their knowledge of music theory, if they're all kind of at the same level, they start to progress nicely as they go forward. But if one thing is overlooked, if there's one thing that's just at a 0 and the other things are at a 6, it holds everything else back. You stop moving forward because of these anchors. But even if you could see them, even if you did realize, well, I really need to bring all these other things up to speed, it's hard to find videos about these things. It's hard to find help for those. So the flashy things, they attract you. They're fun. And you work on them and you have a good time, but after it's over, you go, I'm not really any better than I was before. So what do? You do more of the flashy stuff. You hope for the best. Maybe if I just keep doing this, keep beating my head against the wall, at some point I'll get better. That's dysfunctional. It's a cycle. But that's normal now. The dysfunction is normal in a lot of areas of life, not just this, right? But I'm old, right? I'm old enough to remember the good old days, right? When it wasn't like this. This is new in the big scheme of things. This is new, this problem. It's a byproduct of new learning. But you're here. You haven't turned it off so far. You're listening to me. So there's hope about this. I swear to you, I'm going to keep repeating these things over and over and over again, because it's the answer to this question that I get every week. Why are my solos aimless? Why does everything I do sound like it doesn't have a point to it? And what can I do about it? So we have fretboard, phrasing, targeting, rhythm. Today's lesson, if you head on over there and watch it, it's about one of these 4s. This is about targeting. In specific, it's about beginners doing some targeting. How long have you been playing? How long? Some of us a couple years, some of us since COVID, some of us have been playing since 1965. Right? And were you doing any targeting? Were you paying any attention to the chords when you first started doing your lead guitar lines? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But wouldn't you think that if there was a way to do it easily as a beginner, you would have started to train your ear a little bit to hear the difference between strong notes and weak notes in the beginning, right? How would that have changed the course of your guitar playing when you were just starting to play lead guitar, to think about, oh, this chord's going to this chord. What could I do about that? Targeting. We're targeting the harmony as it goes through. So what I've done for the lesson today, it's an easy way to sound professional with a very small amount of work and thinking invested in what you're doing. In this week's lesson, if you hear it, it sounds advanced. You might hear in the beginning, I play the lick. I play all of the licks together. In fact, I make 10 licks, and it's really a whole solo. At the end, there's a play along. So you learn each lick one after another, and then you put them all together at the end, and you have a whole blues solo, right? When you listen to it, it sounds like, is this really for beginners? It sounds advanced. But if you dive into it, there's nothing in there that you'll have a problem playing at all. This is not hard to do. But the end result is something greater than what you put into it, because there's some thinking involved in that. So we're targeting some things. In a chord, you have certain notes that make up the chord. If you take a look at your C major chord here, right? You take a look at your C major chord on the guitar. You've been playing that since you started, or your E chord, or any of the chords, G, whatever. And as you're playing them, you just think of the shape. Well, take a minute. I'm sure you know the names of the strings. E, A, D, G, B, E. Right? Eddie, A, dynamite, goodbye, Eddie. And so for each of those notes, when you press, let's do the C. When you press the C down, right? I'm totally flying off of my outline right now. I don't care. This is fun. So we've got this C. Let's figure out these notes. So the first one on the A string is the 3rd fret. Well, what is that note? We have it A sharp, B, C. That's our C note. Our next string, we have our D string. So if we count up from the beginning, D, D sharp, E, that's a 2nd fret. So far we have a C and an E. Now our next string, that's open G, that's easy. C, E, and G. We've got 2 more notes. Let's continue. On the B string, 1st fret, C. We've got a double here. Let's see here. We got 1 more string. What do we got? We got the open E string, high E, E. That's another double. So we're playing all 5 notes of the C major chord, and only 3 separate notes. 2 of them are doubles, right? So we have a root, a 3rd, and a 5th. Those 3 notes make up this chord. These are the notes that are going to establish what's strong and what's weak when you try to play over them. And you think, well, I don't really care about rhythm. I mean, I don't really care about lead guitar, but that's fine. You still need to know this. Here's why. Vocal melody. Say you're going to sing over, you're going to be a songwriter. You don't want to write leads. You want to write songs. The scales over top of the chords and whether they match or not, the most important thing in writing a melody, right? What's the difference between a guitar lead and a vocal melody? Not much, just the instrument that it's played on, right? Bass lines. Say you need to put a bass line over top of something. You're going to need to know the line, the scales, the ways to go between these notes that we just found, the C, the E, and the G. Now, when you switch chords, we go to an F chord here. Now we've got an F. That's the 3rd fret of the D string. I won't count it up for you. We've got an A. That's the 2nd fret of the G string. We have a C. That's the 1st fret of the B string. And then another F, a double of the F. 3 more notes, F, A, and C. Different. That's different than the first chord. The first chord is C, E, and G. The second chord is F, A, and C. We have one note that's the same, the C, right? We have two other notes, the F and the A, are different than the E and the G. Those differences in these notes are where the harmony changes. And if you are going to play something that doesn't sound aimless, we need to take aim. What are we going to take aim for? The chord tones. This is where the music changes. This is what makes it interesting. So we're not just playing the same thing all the time. But that whole thing about, well, if you learn one scale, you can play it over the whole song and it'll just work. Well, kinda. Kind of. It will match the overall picture. But the problem is we have strong notes and weak notes. And if you're playing a strong note over one chord, one of those notes, let's pick one of them, C, E, and G. Not the C, because they're shared, right? So let's say E. So I'm playing an E over the first chord, right? And then now the chord changes to an F, but I'm still playing that E thinking it's going to be strong. And now that's the major seventh of that chord. That's a different sound, right? So here's E. It actually would make it sound like a seventh chord. Or how about G would be a better example? So if I play the G over the C chord, that's the fifth. Or let's do it up here. A nice strong note. When that chord switches to an F, now that's the ninth of this chord, a weaker sound. Kind of a neat sound. It's like an add nine sound, but not if you're playing single notes, not as strong as it would have been before. So being able to understand what notes are in the chords and when they change, can I reflect that in the lead or the vocal melody or the bass line that I'm playing? You can start to see that's going to be very important. So how do we do that? How do we understand? Well, how do you take the first step? Well, the first step that I like to take is the root notes, right? Root notes are, very easy. We're already doing it. If you're a rhythm guitar player, if you play any rhythm guitar, okay, well, guitar at all, play me a C, A minor, D, G, right? Say you're playing those in bar chords, C, A minor, D, and G. What was I doing with that? Especially on the bar chords, what was I doing? I was looking up and down the low E string for those notes. The C's at the 8th fret, and that's where I built my chord. The A minor's at the 5th fret. The D's at the 10th fret. The G's at the 3rd fret. I looked for those notes, and then I built my chords on those. This is the same thing, but for melody, for scale patterns. Just find the notes of the chords that are playing the root note. It's so easy. Try it the next time that you're playing a lead over the solo. Pay a little attention to the chords and see, just take the name of the chords and play that note over the chord. This week I did blues. I did A blues. That's A7, D7, and E7. If I had you play those chords, A7, D7, E7, you need to find an A, build your chord there, a D, and then an E. If you were to target those, you just have to play them in a scale pattern. So let me play this for you. I didn't play anything but root notes. I didn't play any chords. Could you hear the chord progression going through? When I played those single notes, I was playing A's. I was just playing octaves of an A. I could have done it like this. I can hear those chords going through those. I could hear the harmony that I'm trying to put out there just by playing a single note. Pretty interesting that we can do that we can, oh, that's blues. I can kind of hear, oh, it's about to turn. There's the 4 chord, right? Very interesting about that. Well, you can do that with a lot of different notes in the chords, all of them, really. So what's another note that's in the chord? The thirds, right? The thirds. Well, what's the third? So if I play an A major scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, major 7th root. We're doing dominant 7 for blues. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I go up the scale to first. We jump to second, go to third, jump to fourth, go to fifth. These are the arpeggios, which means the chord notes played one note at a time. So if I had a A7 chord, and the third of that chord would be the C sharp. Okay? Now, what about the 4 chord? The 4 chord in a blues, in an A blues, is a D7, some type of D7. I'm playing a D9, same chord, just a little decoration different. What's the third of that chord? An F sharp. Okay, so the first note is, that's our 1 chord. That's the third of this chord. Back to the A chord, the C sharp. Now, on our 5 chord, we have an E7 chord. The third of that is G sharp. Back to the F sharp. There's the 4 chord. Back to the... So, I'm going to play it without... That's a little harder to hear because we don't have the A note along. Here's with the root. Really hear it that time. I put the root note back in there. But let's say here, I'm going to play a little bit. Could you hear the chords going by as I played that little improv that I did? All I did was outline, I targeted those notes in the chords that are going to change, the thirds, the root notes. Another note that we can target is the 5th of the chord. This has a different sound. This is a little bit like a power chord. It's a stronger note. So if I'm playing over this track, it has a very solid sound, it sounds like a power chord, right? The root and the 5th together. And then we go, very different quality. Now, as we go through these, the root of the chord, the 3rd of the chord, and the 5th of the chord, when I say target them, I'm just playing them simple right now. I'm just playing them, just letting them ring over the chord so you can really hear that they match the sound. But when you play them, what would you play? You would probably maybe play them at the end of a phrase or at the beginning of a phrase or build up to it or go down to that note. Somehow that note is featured there. It's a little bit more important than the other notes. It might be the timing when you play that, right? On beat 1 or maybe beat 3 on stronger beats. Maybe at the end of a measure, anticipating a new chord coming in. So you might play it on the and of 4, the very last 8th note before the new measure comes in, kind of as an anticipation. There's a lot of different ways that you could come up with this, but for some reason, you need to feature that note to say, hey, this is the end of what I'm saying, or this is the base of what I'm saying. This is the strong point of what I'm saying. And I if you struggle with these things, I highly suggest you just try it today. Try to pay some attention to the chords other than just playing licks in the scale going up and down. It's not working for a lot of people there. And the last one in blues that from this lesson that we were playing was the flat 7. Now this is the funky sound. I'm just going to play the root of the chord and then the flat 7. That really tells you that this is blues. This is a dominant chord. This is not major 7, right? This is dominant. So if I played a lick, you hear that? It feels like it wants to go somewhere. That's what a dominant chord does. It doesn't want to stay still. It wants to move on. It wants to resolve somewhere else. To me, this note wants to resolve downward there. Now, what would that be if the next chord came in? So we're over A7. And say the D7 is coming in. That's that third of the D7, the F sharp that we talked about before. Hear how that sounds? It wants to go a half step down. Very important. Outlining the different chord tones, the roots, the thirds, the fifths, and the flat 7s. It's easy to do. They're under your fingers already. Play the chord, figure out what the notes are in the chord, and see if you can play those notes in your line. You're going to take a step up just by doing that. Boom. You know, we talked about how when you learn guitar, we never feel like we're getting any better. We work and we work and we work on some things. It just feels like we're on a stair that's not going any higher. Until something happens, something that's very obvious, or maybe someone says something nice to you or something good happens to you. And then you feel like, boom, you're up on the next stair, right? Well, were you really not getting it? No, you were getting better, just didn't feel like it, right? You were actually getting better and better and better the time you were putting in. But this was one of those things that might make you think, boom, I'm up to the next level. If you could just put a couple of the chord notes in with your guitar solos. Even if you just do one or two, just to say, hey, this is, I acknowledge that there's something else going on behind me. There's a bunch of chord playing going on here, and I'm going to reflect that in my solo. So I hope that this helps you just know a starting point to get out of the aimless solo thing. And when you do it, it's going to sound very basic at first. Okay, but you got to start there. You got to start with a root note, or, you know, you hear these other people that they weave these lines back and forth. Well, that's how they started. You're not going to get there unless you start with the easy stuff, get good at the easy stuff, and then move up through there forward. And so I hope this helps you. I would love to help you with this. This is what I do. I work on the 4 things. And this is one of the big things that we work on every week in coaching. If you feel lost, if you feel like, well, I'm directing my practice and it's not getting anywhere, I would love to help you. I have about 10 spots left. And once I fill up these last 10 spots, at that point, I will only take new people in as someone drops out. There's only I want to cut it off. I don't want to take too many people so that I can't handle the load. So I've cut it off 10 more spots. So head over to Play Guitar Coaching. You can just type that into Google or playguitaracademy.com/play guitar coaching. The link is in the description. Best way to do it. And put in an assessment there. And I'd love to meet with you and talk about getting guitar playing, moving forward and doing some of this stuff, putting it in practice. And I have a lot of different things that could help you move forward very quickly. And I'd love for you to experience the way that feels. And so I'm going to call it. That's a wrap. Thanks for joining me today for the Play Guitar Podcast. Make sure to hit the button below to subscribe to the show. And if you have benefited from this podcast, please leave a review over at Apple Podcasts. It's the best way to make sure we get this very valuable content to more guitar players around the world. And if more help, structure, and results in your guitar playing sound good to you, what are you waiting for? Head over to Play Guitar Academy and think about Play Guitar Coaching. I'd love to see you over there. Okay. Thanks, everybody. I'll see you in the next episode.